Thank you so much for listening to the Spooky Door podcast. Before we begin this episode, we just want to say that you can now watch our episodes and not just listen to them.
That's right. We're now uploading all our episodes with video content onto our YouTube channel with lots of various topics, such as top 10s and more.
Of course, we will always maintain our audio form, but now you can watch the episodes.
If there is any subject or topic you'd like us to cover, please let us know. Check out thespookydoor.com or search for the Spooky Door Podcast on YouTube.
As always, thank you so much for being a listener, and we appreciate all the support.
Venture into the shadows with hosts Jordan and Ashley as they peel back the veil to reveal in-depth images into a different realm. One of strange events, places, occurrences, phenomena, and sometimes even horror. Join them as they journey through the spooky door.
Welcome to the Spooky Door podcast. My name is Jordan. With me as always, Ashley. And on this show, we cover the unexplained and the unusual. Today, we have a special guest. We have Keith with us, and we're going to be diving into negative spaces and negative places. Ashley, do you want to explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so negative space or places, for anybody who's not quite familiar with that, can be created by individuals who carry it with them. So like, for example, any family you have come into your home, any guests, a coworker, it can even be objects that it can be left on. So it's created by anyone who has negative emotion, negative attitude towards anything. So everything essentially has its own energy. Your emotions, your home, your land, even decorations that are hanging in your house, for example. That can have energy to it. And as we go through our day and we interact with other objects, the vibration from the energy from object to object can be left. It's like an imprint that can be left because the one object's energy would pick up the other's energy.
Okay, and of course, that's a great explanation of all that. Of course, also negative.
I'm like a scientist.
I know. Well, negative space can also be created by
scientist.
negative actions and occurrences. Like, can happen there too.
That's true.
So we have Keith with us today, who has a pretty vast history dealing with this type of situation and phenomenal.
Well, as promised in the beginning of said episode with the intro, and they talk about scary. I guess I've had some scary relationships and scary situations in my life.
Nightmares.
Nightmarish.
Just for like some clarification before we get any further. If anybody listening right now is listening to our previous episodes, in our first episode, there is one portion where, if you recall, Jordan brings up the house that I live in, how he is surprised that there is nothing negative in our house. And I make a comment along the lines of, I am as well, because of all the negative things that happened in the past. That is the house we're going to talk about today. And our guest is actually my boyfriend, Keith, who is the same Keith I mentioned in that episode.
Yeah, the house itself, I moved into, well over 16, 17 years ago. It is over 100 years old. But the negative aspects or anything like that I'm going to be talking about have absolutely nothing to do with the history of the house. I really have no idea of the past history of the house. Some cursory stuff, mind you, but nothing particular. But what we're going to be talking about, what Ashley and Jordan asked me to talk about, was something that, they understood and we talked about and interacted with, was the energy of the house and energy of spaces in the house, and how for a portion of time there was a negativity. Now, I'll give you a quick lead into my sensibility of all this. Your hosts here, very much into the paranormal, very astute, very educated, have very strong faith-based lifestyles in that regard. I myself, I refer to myself as a recovering Catholic. I was born and raised Catholic. I'm no longer practicing. I was an altar boy. I never had the traumatic things happen to me, so that has nothing to do with it. My blessing was, unfortunately, the horrible individuals at my church like little girls. That's a fact. So unfortunately, there are probably some young ladies that from my childhood who have horrible experiences. But as an altar boy, no, not at all. I don't fall. I don't practice it. My relatives do. I've had things in my life that have challenged that belief. I myself, I'm a Taoist. Easiest way to explain what I believe is I believe shit happens, and you just deal with it. And when you deal with it, your life and the energy that responds to you and that interacts with you and everything from this life and the hereafter is based on how you react to said things, those challenges. Be positive, and positive things happen. I guess that's the easiest way to explain my mindset when we're getting into all this. Now, that being the case, even though I can't really say I'm very, very astute in my interaction with paganism, comes from a previous relationship years ago. I used to go to a lot of rock and roll shows. My daughter's mother was big into the Grateful Dead. Went to a lot of Dead shows. So there was a lot of hippie, trippy stuff going on. So things in regards to cleansing houses and spaces and things that we're going to talk about was introduced to me then. Burning of sage and things to purify a house. Now, I understand Catholicism, they would bless a house. So there's, depending on your religious aspect, there's always something. Every religion has something that involves protecting or bringing positivity to a house and expelling negativity. So there's always that. Now, as Ashley said, we live in this house here. I divorced, remarried, and I was in this house for a prolonged period of time with my second wife. My second wife and I split because she was adulterous, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff involved. Yeah. So while I was working and doing stuff, she was working and doing stuff too. And when it was all said and done, that where we're getting with the whole energy aspect of things is all of her stuff that she had left behind. There were a lot of personal artifacts and stuff were just boxed up, and they were old things. So there was a section of the basement where there was just boxes of stuff there for years. I just just
tucked away.
Yeah,
just tucked away and forgotten about.
It's a hidden surprise.
Yeah. And I would go downstairs, and this house has never had any kind of a haunting or anything crazy like that. But I don't know if it's just psychologically speaking. You get somebody who's like, "Oh, that's just you," because it's there.
Here's the thing: I don't think it's psychological because I didn't know it was down there still, and I would go down there, and it's hard to describe how I would feel, but it didn't feel like the rest of the house. It was like almost a little bit on edge, not to the point it makes you angry, but you're just like, man, I don't feel comfortable.
Yeah, you didn't know it was there. I never told you that.
Yeah,
there was just a bunch of stuff down there.
Yeah, you told me about the stuff, but you didn't tell me it was still there. I just always assumed like, oh, it wasn't there anymore because we don't need it. It's gone.
But Jordan, at one point when we were talking about the house, he was just like, your house it's just empty. I don't feel anything, not good, not bad.
Yeah, that's okay. I would say that's probably more how I felt when I was down there.
He went downstairs. Jordan and I played music together in a band, and we practiced in the basement. And where he happened to be set up is by the under part of the stairs, where there was just all those boxes of just stuff that I just didn't want to deal with and didn't want to look at and didn't want to pay attention to.
I don't blame you. I mean, if it's carrying energy like that, you wouldn't.
But he brought up, he's just like, I just get a really like there's a strong negative.
That's where it's dark. It was like, I was like, I don't know what's going on over here, dude.
Yeah,
what's going on in your basement?
And then I'm like, oh well, that literally is boxes of stuff that my lawyer told me to keep because she, like an idiot, left her journals, which had tons of incriminating evidence, along with other stuff in there. And I was like, oh yeah, which he's like, oh, I said, yeah,
No,
that's what
explains
all
it.
that is. And I just attributed it to the fact that obviously I knew it was there. So when I got near it, I just felt
Right.
like, it was like sad and obviously nothing I really wanted to recollect on. Now, again, as we're talking about the energy of the space, after that, I had another relationship with a person who lived here, and long story short, that was another one where things just went south, and so when they left.
Here we are talking about negative spaces. We're just digging up all your information.
Yeah.
Relationships.
Yeah. So but as it says,
Cleaning
it
out
can be.
Keith's closet.
It can be directly involved with person's actions and people coming and going, and that second relationship and the people that she brought into this house, and as they came and went. So yeah, there was a very much a heavy air about this place,
Right.
that needed cleansing. So there, Ashley being as involved as she is, and with my knowledge, as it were. We've burned sage, and there have been actual rituals to cleanse the house. Years ago, when I worked a construction job, there were some Latino friends of mine who used to burn, and I didn't find out what it was until you actually explained it to me, Jordan. They when they would do a frame of a house, they would actually bless the house, and they would burn some sort of wood and everything else, and I guess it was palo or something. When I had moved into the house first time around, we all kind of hung out and whatnot, and had kind of a housewarming, and they burned it, and that was one of those things like, okay, here's the blessing of the house. But
And one of the reasons why Palo actually works is because it's been traditionally known to kill bacteria, viruses, parasites, yeast, fungus, and is often used as a disinfectant. So there's
I've
actually
used
been
it.
there's
I
actually
don't like the way it smells.
I don't mind the way it smells. I like
Just a forewarning for like
Yeah.
anybody who hasn't used it. And
well, if you're getting it at like places like Walmart and Meijer, that's not like
Yeah,
that's
you
like
wanna
that's not like
go
really like the
somewhere
real stuff.
legit.
Yeah.
to get it.
Even online, if you order it, you can find and they'll have like list where it came from, and like because you want like the high grade stuff because like it actually works and it actually has like a different smell. But the wood is actually becoming scarce because so many people are now using it for cleansing and so many.
Also, an FYI there, if you're thinking of going and getting stuff to raise some awareness, maybe we need to calm down there.
find organizations that are promoting the replanting,
Right.
and obviously the.
So yeah, the tree is actually like the tree and the wood is actually becoming more scarce and harder and more expensive because people have been like harvesting like crazy as of late.
Now, obviously talking about the negative energies, and Ashley and Jordan both in the beginning when you were breaking down things that people can bring that energy to your place. It's all very new age, and you'll get a lot of people kind of just poo-poo the whole idea. But the funny thing is, like I said, going back to the whole doesn't matter what your religion is. Every religion has this idea. It may be worded slightly different,
yeah.
but every single one, like I said, Catholicism, they come and bless the house. How is that any different?
Well, just to
that's
like not interrupt you, but just to point out there and that like comment that like it's not any different than that, and like people are like, oh, it's new agey. There's actually some science behind this, though. In physics, for example, the thing there is energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred or converted. So with that being said, as far as blessing the house and being new agey or religious or whatever, like there's actually a solid science behind it.
Well, plus, as Jordan brought up with the science with Palo, okay, you're blessing a place to bring well-being and a positivity to the house, but then he's saying that obviously it has real health benefits.
Right.
So there's the thing. It's like, oh well, look, we've been blessed. Well, the science is that you've been blessed because these things have actually helped with the health aspects of the air and the surroundings and the environment
Right.
that you're living in. So yes, you are blessed, but again, it's this is why you're healthy. So it kind of goes back and forth.
Yeah, which we'll discuss that more later on about after we, get further into the effects of the negative space as far as blessing things or cleansing them and why
Right.
exactly that is an important process that we need to be doing.
So what creates a negative space? We kind of dived down that a little bit, like things and
Well,
stuff.
people and events, like when it comes to this place. Now, here's the thing: is that as research goes, when we were all talking about this, how a space or a thing can absorb negative energy. Now, again, you can bless a house, you can go through all of these rituals, etc., but the one thing that I personally feel why the house itself wasn't corrupted beyond belief by everything that happened is, again, as I constantly say, and I'll explain it. I'm just very dude about it. As a Taoist, I'm also linked to kind of a cult-esque, funny / cult, not crazy like people with going out and blowing up things. The Big Lebowski, we're very obsessed with it, and it has been linked to Taoism in a religion. I'm an ordained minister of the Church of the Dude. I can actually marry people.
And he's done it before.
And I have.
I know.
And I have. But the thing about it is, like I said, when you say being dude about it, is understanding that bad things happen and you make choices and you actually just interact and do the best you can. And I think that was how it is I didn't blame this space for what happened in it. It had nothing to do with the space, she cheated on me. She lied to me. She said a lot of hurtful things, and I said a lot of hurtful things back, mind you. Don't get me wrong. When I found out, I was a fucking terror. But it wasn't the space. And I think that was another reason why I was able to, move on and continue to inhabit this space. I changed, I changed some furniture. I moved some things around. It doesn't look exactly the same. But it was I never attributed the space to the negative incident. So I think that is one of the reasons why it was very easy in my regard to cleanse it and make it a positive environment, at least from my standpoint.
So when everything was going on here and all of that, and obviously pre-cleansing it and all that was going on, did you ever have any situations or experiences where you just something off happened or something weird happened that you maybe would contribute to?
Well, I mean, when the infidelity was occurring, I kind of suspected. But sadly, they say love is blind, and that's exactly what it was. I refused to believe that could be happening. But yeah, I was working a lot. My daughter's special needs from my first marriage, so I had a lot going on there. I had a lot of things going on that were draining me of energy on all levels, and it was the thing where yes, I could feel, this wasn't a welcome place,
Right.
And I figured, okay, she was in a bad mood, I was in a bad mood, etc., and we weren't seeing a lot of each other. I was working a lot, she was doing a lot of things, etc. But now hindsight being what it is yeah, there are a lot of warning signs, regardless of her demeanor, where walking into this place, there's a weight. There's very much a heaviness to it. And I think it goes both ways, is that she knew obviously that eventually shit was going to come to light and, her life was going to change and it was going to get complicated and my life was going to change. Sadly, when it all went down, it was very much a very messed up situation of, a neighbor was the one who actually was like, dude, I'm sorry. This is, here's concrete proof kind of a thing. And when concrete proof was brought, she still denied, and it went from there. But again, going back, that was the thing. It was just, no, I'm just tired. No, there's just a lot going on. But yeah, I knew there just, this house just had this weight, and it was almost suffocating. To the point of almost not wanting to get out of my car to go into my house and go to bed, so.
Yeah. So, moving on from talking about like your own personal experiences, like with negative space, what like, because I know I've felt this a lot of times too.
Yeah.
And we talked about this before, like a occurrence or a situation will happen at some place, and then it has like this negative ill effect because of such and such happening. Maybe someone even died at, like in the location. It's just something horrible happens there, and that energy just lingers and stays there. So that's another
perfect example of that.
It's
Alex
it gets
both
trapped there.
Yeah.
I think is the.
You and I both went to the Al Rosa.
Yes.
After.
So
and,
that's a great
with
example.
Both of us being in bands. I remember.
That's a great example of that.
Lead into that local club here in Columbus, Ohio. Dimebag Darrell, a phenomenal musician, guitarist, of Pantera fame, was shot and killed on stage. Crazy person
Inside the club.
Inside the Al Rosa on
sure
stage. And there multiple people were injured as well.
December 8th, 2004. That's when the day was.
So obviously the place was shut down for a while, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And after some time, it was reopened. And I went to a couple of shows there. And, people talk about, oh, it's so weird, et cetera. But I, again, you could attribute it just to my own emotions, etc. But yeah, it was. I walked through the doors and I walked towards the stage before any of the bands were playing, and it was like being at a wake.
Yeah, it
still.
has this like this cold, stale feeling, and I remember talking to somebody who played there and shortly after, and they like didn't even plaster over the bullet holes in the wall. Like some of the walls, like on the behind the stage, still had bullet holes they didn't fix because like 3 people got killed there. I never got like it was like haunted. I never felt like a haunting feeling there, but it was just like this awful sadness that just lingered because this horrible event took place there, and it's like they didn't do anything to like change. Like they didn't do anything with the place. They didn't change anything. They didn't change the layout. They didn't do anything. There's just like, oh, this horrible event happened here, and we're just gonna, just move on and act like nothing happened.
And,
Don't even like
too,
fix anything to happen there. It's just
the thing that's scary about that, though, too. Like that's an example of like when you see, and maybe this is gonna sound like typical horror movie related, but there's some truth there when you see situations, people move into a home and the home wasn't cleansed and something happened there, and it's just like without the cleansing and somebody moves into a new home and has that negative past, it's
right.
like it seems like just nothing's gonna go right.
Well, even like with cleansing, you don't even have to actually do like a new agey thing with like
No.
somebody. It's literally just like rearranging, putting some paint on the wall, like just changing up the space to make it look different, make it feel different can do a lot for it. And like in case of the Arosa, they did nothing, like absolutely nothing there. It looked exactly the same. Like
But
after
then,
it happened.
like, the interesting thing about that, though, is like, as we've previously talked about in past episodes, is like sometimes, though, like if something is there and you start changing things, that's when like the shit starts to happen.
Well, yeah, in case of like Maori.
Right. So
yeah.
that's also an interesting
Right.
point, though. Like,
But for this instance, especially with Alrosa, I feel like if they would have done something to make the club look different, and they
Right.
did absolutely nothing with that place, even to the point where like they didn't even plaster the fucking walls.
I'm like, and I'm not saying, obviously, I'm not saying, oh, you shouldn't change things in your house or, in a location. I just think that that's interesting. That's of course when like, you make steps to try and protect yourself from these things. And then if some cases you do them, that's when you get like the worst.
Right.
end of it.
Now, in relation to the negative aspect of the space, and we're talking about, okay, a space can have negative energy. I was talking about actually being on the podcast, and one of my customers brought up something that I thought was kind of interesting. They do tours of the prison that Shawshank was.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
The Mansfield State Prison.
and
That's where
the state
I-
penitentiary.
so.
he actually got a chip of concrete / paint
Oh yeah.
from the place. Like, he was there and he's just like, oh, and whatever. And he's like, you talk about, he's like, what are you gonna be talking about? Talk about negative energy and everything else. And he said he got that because he thought it was really cool, and he was gonna put it in a comic book bag and board, and then get a
I've
picture
been to the
from
Mansfield Reformatory before, and I can already tell you that's a bad idea.
Well,
Yeah.
and he
And
was
we're
gonna
about-
do
For those who
something-
don't know, like Columbus to Mansfield, it's like a 45-minute
Yeah,
drive.
it's
So
not
we're
far.
only about 45 minutes away from the prison that they've shot at Shawshank.
his dad loved the movie.
Right.
And he thought it'd be like
It's a good movie.
a neat thing.
Never-
Like, here's a photo from the movie or the DVD, and he was gonna do something to make it you could hang it on the wall. Well, I guess and where I'm going with this, when he's talking about negative energy, he never gave it as a gift, and eventually threw it
That's
away
probably for the best.
because he said that he was violently ill. And he said he at first didn't really attribute it to it, and he's not very, doesn't have a whole lot of superstitious nature to himself, but it was literally on a desk. He lives in a 1-bedroom, 1 extra room kind of apartment, and he got sick. He just never felt well in his house. He would get home, and then it was like, he thought, man, allergies or whatever. He couldn't figure it out, but he just always felt ill. And when he went to take it and try and turn it into the gift, he's like, oh, I guess the event was coming up. He just got that nauseous, horribly, he just holding it, and he kind of started to put 2 and 2 together. And I guess from what he said, he threw it out and just threw a garbage can outside his door. And next day he felt fine. And that was his thing. He's just like, I don't know, dude, but I was going to do it, but just, it's like that Brady Bunch episode or some shit. I had the tiki, and I was like, oh fuck, man. So yeah, that was his thing, where he's just like, so I kind of believe that to a degree. So there you go.
But it's funny you said that though, because you've never told me this story before. But I have been there, and that's actually the same feeling that I have described to people how I felt when I was there. I felt just awful. I felt sick. I felt like I was going to throw up. It was just not a pleasant experience. And it was odd too, because it was that's how I felt the entire time. But some places, some areas that I would walk into, it was stronger than others.
Yeah, I've felt that. I know exactly.
And I was walking. I was like,
I felt that exact
awful.
same nauseous, ill feeling when I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, and they had an Egyptian exhibit. Ooh, and they had all this ancient Egyptian artifacts.
Which I'm sure, because that's a big
Yeah.
thing with Egyptian culture,
So
which is extremely
Yeah.
wrong to move things and
Right. So
their
wa-
beliefs. So yeah, they'd be a
there was
little pissed.
there was 4 of us, and we were walking through this, and all 4 of us were my brother was with me, and we were both just I want to go in the bathroom right now and throw up. It just had this
Yep.
overwhelming sensation of
it's
being
like a step further than nauseous. It's
Yeah,
it
I know.
feels like it's about to come out, but it's not.
It's the weirdest, worst feeling, having something casting that on you.
Yes, it's awful.
So your friend talking about the piece of the prison, understandable.
It's awful.
I have a friend who has a Ziploc baggie and it has this little shitty printedly little label, and it says, "This is part of Ed Gaines' house." They actually, when they tore down the house, like people, like they built like a little like touristy shop like near the house, and they actually like collected pieces of it and they sold it as like souvenirs.
That's ridiculous.
And I saw it on his wall, and I was like, he's like, yeah, one of my friends gave it to me. Like, she went there and she bought it, and she thought I loved like it. And I was like, dude.
If anybody tried to gift that to me, I'd be like, no.
I'd be like, no, I don't
no,
think.
And we're not
I don't
friends
think.
anymore.
I don't think I'd want something from Ed Gaines' house, and especially his house, inside my house. I just don't think so. But
so lesson learned.
yeah,
It's not a good gift.
You had what's his name? Your friend who's guitarist who had that painting.
Yeah, that was Made of Blood.
Yeah, talk about that for a second.
Well, a friend of ours, back in the day, I was in a band, and I've been in bands my whole life, but when I was a youngster, first band I was in, eccentric friend of ours who was an artist did a painting. It was entirely done in his own blood.
Wait. So when you said blood the first time, I was just assuming like, oh, it's animal blood.
No, it
No,
was like,
his blood.
It was done in the artist's blood. He did it over a period of time, and
which I've seen some artwork by people doing that, and it looks cool.
Yeah.
Like,
different people got different like reactions to it. You know what I mean? Like when the owner has never had an adverse reaction. He loves it and he has it and everything else. But I remember a couple of us were just, very much like, whoa, like there was just something about it when you're in its presence that you're just.
So did you guys have these reactions, and like other people, do they have these reactions not knowing that it's made of blood?
Yeah, before that was the funny thing. It's like, how do I put this? Jokingly, because he was an artist, he was going to art school, and he was very artsy fartsy and everything else. It'd be like, so tell me, you look at art, and how do you, I'm very much right now emoting with my hands because you can't see that, but it's like, how does this make you feel, and all this crap. And it was very pretentious, I guess, but to them, I guess it was all about that, and. That was like the go-to. It was like trying to see what, and then after said fact, you would explain. It's like, well, it's actually,
human blood.
It's human blood. And it was kind of wild to see just exactly like, the reactions to people and whatnot, where you leading into it, they're just like, I don't know, it seems very sad, or, there's an aggressive aspect I see to it, blah, blah, blah. And then you hear it and you're like, wow. And you put that feeling to obviously where it came from.
What was your first reaction of it when he asked you and you didn't know what it was?
I have not talked to this individual in over 20 plus years, but I can still honestly say, the guy's name is his name's Mike Cook. But we all called him Friday. Long story. I still love Friday. He's one of my brothers. If I saw him now, I'd give him a big hug and be like, holy fuck, how you doing? 800 miles, Lord knows where he is in New England, over 20, 30 years between us now. But at that time, I knew one thing about him, is that he had a lot of shit going on. And the fact that he was cutting himself and then doing what he was doing art-wise, I was concerned. I think that was my thing.
Well, what was your reaction when he asked you what you thought of the painting before you knew it was, like, prior to you knowing it was made of blood? And he was like, were you like, did you get any vibes from it? Or were you like, this makes me sad? Or...
Again, I'm going to sound like a dick because I used the word pretentious before. I am not an artsy-fartsy guy in that regard, so I was kind of just like, like you made another painting. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I hate to say it, but that's but with him, obviously this is something he's very passionate about. And there are people who that's their gig, that is the thing. But with me, I just kind of looked at it and it's like, yeah, Friday's doing something weird again. It's just kind of, yeah, it's, to me, it's just like, and then I'm like, oh, whoa, are you okay? You know, I mean, like you. And then jokingly, I'm just like, dude, if you needed a few bucks for paints, I'd have fucking loaned it to you. But I mean, it's like running out of red. It's a little
but
crazy.
I mean, I think that's another point that's important to make. That when it comes to negative space, negative energy, it's not just necessarily tied to a house or a room.
Right.
Like it can be on objects, which is why it's also important in some cases, depending on what you're purchasing. But if you're purchasing something that could potentially have previously been owned by someone else, it's again you want to cleanse that.
Speaking of objects, I want to throw this out to you guys. In May of
Is it about a haunted doll?
No, it's not about haunted doll.
We're
this
gonna
is in,
revisit that.
Yeah, we're gonna definitely revisit it. This was in May of 2018. Ikea did a study, and they set up 2 household plants in a school. Have you guys heard this study?
No. I haven't.
Okay, so they set up 2 different household plants, and they told all the student body for 30 days. One they're going to talk total shit to, and one they're going to encourage.
That's awful.
Yeah, so one of the plants is going to receive nothing but negative energy,
This is
negative
sad, so-
like negative input from the plants and stuff like that.
I've heard about this,
Yeah.
but not through IKEA. But
Yeah,
I've
IKEA,
heard about something like that.
Yeah, IKEA was the ones who did the study. This is the one they did in 2018 at least. So then after 30 days, they set up the 2 plants so that students could see like the results. And obviously the one that had all the negative crap was all wilted and dying and totally like falling apart. And the one that had all this positive like reinforcements was like flourishing and growing really wildly. So I'm wondering if you took that plant that had all that negative energy, you put that in your house, like it's probably gonna.
I wouldn't even
Well,
know.
Yeah, it's probably not gonna. It's the 2 things could probably happen. It'd probably cast off that negative energy, or you could probably positively reinforce it, so it would probably start growing healthy again.
Yeah, I would feel like even if you did like start trying to grow it healthy again in the meantime, like some of that would have to cast off. I feel like with as much of it that was probably there coming from that many individuals, that's probably like I feel like a bit.
And this was for their anti-bullying campaign. IKEA was part of an anti-bullying campaign.
That's a
why,
really good,
and that's why they did it. It was kind
that's
of
a
show,
really good
like,
visual though to
Yeah.
like help especially teenagers that age to understand.
Now, a perfect example of something retaining energy, and I guess obviously too, it's how you actually, maybe it's even how you interact with something, because say that object has come in contact with a multitude of circumstance and individuals, and you'll see where I'm going with this here in a minute. But I guess maybe when it comes down to it is that the person who then is either the owner or in close contact with it can almost dictate what aspect of energy is actually going to interact with them.
Right.
Best example of that is I have 2 bricks in my possession. Well, one's a portion of a brick, one is a whole brick. One is actually a piece of the bathroom from CBGB's in New York. A friend of mine, good friend of mine, back home played a show there before the iconic club where the Ramones and so many other bands started. While the other bands were playing, went in there with a hammer and chisel and chiseled a piece of the place to give to me because he knew I was such a huge fan. So I got it as a gift. I have this piece and it's subscribed to me. Now this is
on
CBGB's.
display in our house.
Now this is, right below a Buddha and next to a Lebowski pop and a whole bunch of other things that are relatively religious to me, I guess. But you would figure, okay, this is CBGB's. Tons of crazy things, good and bad, have happened there.
Right.
And when I've had that in my possession, and every time I hold it, every time I'm near it, I feel nothing but good. I mean, nothing
Yes,
but.
I agree with you. I've picked that thing up and held it in my hand, and there's definitely some
Now it was
good feelings.
It was presented to me by, a high school friend of mine who I'm still dear friends with. We played in bands together, went to high school together. Very few people can you say in your lifetime that you stay friends with. And even when
Right.
I moved 800 miles away, we still interacted and everything else. And it was that aspect of, he gave it to me with such a positive
Yeah.
feeling, etc. So regardless of hell, somebody could have been, people have been stabbed in the bathroom there, and people did drugs and died in there,
Right.
OD'd, etc. But again, it's not that. It's only the positive I bring forth from that. Now, where I'm going with this is, I have a brick when they demolished our local CBGBs here, Bernie's.
Bernie.
And again, I have a lot of fond memories of playing there. But it's funny when you talk about Bernie's as a person who's in a band, it's a mixed bag. You talk about it fondly, but for all intent and purposes, 90% of the time when you were there were a lot of crazy negative aspects of playing at Bernie's.
Bernie's, for those who are trying to figure it out, it was this basement dwelling venue. The stage was about 6 inches off the floor. There was always cockroaches crawling around on the stage or on the floor. The bar had food. You never ate the food. The only beer you drink is make sure it was either PBR, because that was the only keg that was constantly restocked, or you drank it out of a can. Beyond that, you didn't drink anything else, or the hard liquor, because that could pretty much kill anything.
And there were no doors on any of the bathroom stalls.
Yeah, there's no doors. Bernie's was a hellish shithole for a punk rock club.
Bernie's, and it's called Bernie's Bagels was the full name of it. We all just called it Bernie's. Was where I learned to pee in a public restroom without touching anything.
Bernie's was that place you pissed in the sink in the bathroom because it was cleaner than pissing in the toilet.
For real. It was like, if I sit down on this toilet, it's not a matter of am I going to get germs? You're going to get something.
I have a bar stool from Bernie's.
See, and that's the thing.
I have a full bar stool that was actually retained from a fight that was picked up and thrown at somebody, and the band we played with went the night afterwards and went and grabbed it and presented it to us as a trophy. So we have a bar stool from Bernie's, and that thing doesn't have any energy whatsoever. It's just a chair. I mean, it just sits in the corner. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any positive, any negative energy. I mean, I look at it, mainly just laugh and just kind of like, oh yeah, that's from that crazy event, this fight that happened. But
yeah, I met a lot of great people. I had a lot of great times there. Even with an ex relationship and an ex band that no longer exists, where there is some negativity there, etc. But that's not why I feel like the.
So what's the brick?
The brick has it has an aspect much like where I was talking about before. There's an immense sadness. Like, it doesn't, you know what I mean? It doesn't have any positive energy. It was, it was gotten for that, hey, I want a trophy. But
right.
I guess maybe it's the simple fact of it wasn't like with the CBGB's brick, where it was still a venue. It was still open at the time, even, when Jace got that brick.
Yeah, it was still going and running.
This was when the place was leveled.
Yeah.
This is when the place was literally killed, if you will. This is from a
demolition.
It was a demolition. So I'm
because there's now a target on.
Yes.
I think that's why.
I think that's why I had it in my old roommate and drummer in my band got it, and he was just like, hey. And it's just like every time I was near it or held it, it just weighed me down. And I'm figuring maybe that's what it is. It's just
probably from the.
It's just that was it. It was
the difference between when it was taken when the building was up and taken when the building was.
Because the one from CBGB was just taken out of the wall.
Yeah, while show was happening.
Right,
yeah, the venue's gone now. But I guess that's the thing is that they have two different stories as to why they're in my possession.
And
but the latter is very sad.
Because I know, that was the thing about Bernie's Bagels. It was almost like on a lower scale, like the CBGBs of Columbus. There was a lot of sadness, and people were very upset and heartbroken when we found out it was going to be torn down, because that's what it was, it meant so much to us. And it happened I don't even think any of us even went there anymore, but it was still that was a big chunk.
See, I was still playing there.
Yeah,
and that was I think that's the other thing too, is that
I wasn't going there anymore.
I was still playing there, and in fact, the last show they ever had was New Year's Eve, and the band I was in at the time, we played that New Year's show, and it was insane. And literally people were, picking from the corpse. They were just tearing shit off the walls because they knew it was that night, New Year's Eve. So on top of it being New Year's, a crazy show unto itself, it was that
last
was it.
night.
They
So
were-
everyone's,
after
I
that,
remember
they were
everyone's
done.
like, I heard stories about people just ripping shit off the walls and ripping shit off the
Yep.
bar and just. So yeah, that's not how I get the bar stool. Bar stool I got from like way later.
Right,
way
and
earlier
again,
on.
where you can say to yourself, it's like, yeah, okay, it had some history, but I'm just feeling that, as many great people as I met and as many fun times as I had there, just that brick was just, it was like part of a corpse.
Also, I think every city has a place like that, has this punk hellhole that's in a basement or in some kind of dilapidated building, and they just built a shitty stage, put a shitty sound stage in there, and then we're like, okay, we're gonna run shows here now. Like up in Akron, they have Annabelle's, which is another like shithole in the basement. So I think every city probably has one of those, something like that.
It's like they were never made to last, and they lasted longer probably than they initially should have. But it's like the whole point of them was to eventually, it was going to be destroyed. Which you almost wonder too if maybe that's part of the reason, like that energy's there because it's never meant to stay.
Now, I'll go to co-host Ashley here, my girlfriend. So I've talked a lot, obviously, about the energy of the house and everything else from my standpoint. So we started dating, and obviously she'd come over and hang out and everything else. And how was it for you when you came to the house? Did you have any immediate feelings?
Yes.
Because, I know for a fact, all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to do a cleansing, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that.
Yes.
So why don't you talk about that?
To answer that question, yes. So I remember the first time I was over here, it was like, you come into the house, it's, it's old, but like, it's lived in like a good way. But the first time I remember they came in this house, I just felt like, I don't know, something was off. And, I never said anything at the time. Obviously, you're not going to tell somebody that you just started dating, you haven't been together that long, that you like, hey, I don't feel comfortable in your house.
Oh no, I've told people that. I'm like, hey, what the fuck's up with your place, man?
Right. But, at the same time, yeah, part of me did want to. And it was like, you didn't feel welcome when you walked in here. Like, and it was almost like at times it was like, not like a physical, like, oh, I feel cold, like, but more of like an emotional coldness to it. Was definitely, and it was there for a while. I still felt it, because I didn't cleanse it. For clarification, I never cleansed this house until after I moved into it, and it was there. I always felt it there up until that point, up until after I cleansed it.
But again, it wasn't like a haunting feeling. It wasn't like the house has an energy from a haunting. It's more just like there's residue of energy, like negative energy from the
and that was the thing too. I could tell it the difference. I didn't think it was haunted, but
right.
I knew
that haunting
it
feeling
was
like
something.
Negative energy from like a haunting standpoint, or when something like really awful happens, compared to like someone who just has that like vampiric, like nasty energy, and they just leave that anywhere they go and
that's how it felt.
That's a little bit different. That's a completely different type of situation, because like every time I came over here, like I never felt really much of anything. I always just came over, and I think part of it too is like this house has like you all over this place. It's like, I'm talking to Keith, like walk in the house, it was written actually the house this time instead of recording in my living room, but it's like everywhere you look, you just got stuff that's you. That's your personality everywhere you. So that also helps too, because it also has that inviting feeling of just like, yeah, this is my house. There's all my stuff, and it's like you got like comic books and toys all over the place. And this was even before you moved in. So
where now it's just different aspects of pop culture, because you go from Ramones posters and Thor's hammer to her shelf of Sailor Moon and My Little Pony and whatnot.
Yeah, but no, I think that is a perfect example of how things can hold energy, and how much that reflects back to what I was saying at the beginning where everything has an energy and, you know, it's left or picked up on another object's energy. You know, this house obviously turns into whatever type of energy is present. Now it's got a complete different energy. There's his stuff, there's my stuff, there's Sarah's stuff. So it's definitely got a homey, positive, family energy to it now. Like, you know, you come into this house and it's like, you know, there's like, I walk into the house and I feel like
you're home.
You're home. Your family. Yeah, and you know, before it wasn't like that. Before I cleansed it, it was like it didn't feel like you were walking into home.
Now, also, our relationship was very much cards on the table.
Not very much. It was 100%.
Yeah, I mean, we were, you know,
just
both,
to know,
both of us had been through disastrous things, and neither one of us was really looking to be in a relationship. We just dug each other's company, and then it blossomed from there. But it was one of those things like, look, I don't have time for games. This is blah. This is it. You know what I mean?
That's where we were at.
It's just like, you know, like here's literally everything that's uncomfortable. That, you know, this way I don't ever have to say to myself like, oh, I hope she doesn't now. You know, here you go. And you know, did that add, like, obviously when you're like, I need to cleanse this house, like, was that sitting there, or was it still the fact that you had that feeling?
It wasn't any that I knew the stuff. It was the feeling. Definitely. That's what the big thing was for me. Cause the feeling, like at the beginning, the feeling I knew bits and pieces of everything, but I didn't know everything. So I think when I first got that feeling, you know, some people would attribute that, oh, well, you knew everything that happened. Well, no, I didn't know every little thing that happened. So it was definitely a feeling. And that's why I definitely essentially decided, you know, I want to cleanse the house because the feeling was still there. And it wasn't necessarily like
and unbeknownst to you, there are still boxes.
Right. That's the thing. I didn't know that stuff was there.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
And I don't think it had anything to do with me knowing like, oh, this stuff happened here and I have to like. I
got this like box in the basement. It's immediate, it's like black and goo energy.
Yeah,
all kinds of wrong. Kinds of wrong.
Yeah.
In fact, to clarify that, I eventually, just recently, mind you, legally speaking and everything else, and, you know, I've been long since divorced and everything else, and I just kept putting it off. I burned her journals. I burned a lot of this stuff that, you know, pictures and everything else. And I did a ritual prayer in that in regards to when I was doing that. And I think the thing that I got to express the most is that now, regardless of the situation and regardless of what happened, etc., I can reflect on all of it without any kind of negative emotion, almost a neutrality of not necessarily forgiveness, just acceptance that, hey, it happened. It's done. You can't change it. You can't change them. You can't change yourself. All you can do is learn from it and become a better person by it. And, you know, by not having this physical artifact, almost a monument to a bad situation without it being there, it allowed a space in me and a space in the house to be inhabited by a positive energy.
That was a fun day too. He was like out in the backyard burning stuff, and like he's coming like up and down from the basement. So to like get to our backyard, like if you're coming from the basement, you have to go up the stairs and it goes into the kitchen, and then the kitchen goes out to the back. So that's where we burn stuff. And he's just like going through this path back and forth. And finally, like, I was like, what are you burning? Oh. And he told me, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know this stuff. Like, that was just my response. I was like, because I had cleansed the house like so many times. I was like, I didn't even know that was here anymore.
Yeah, the worst of it, I could say the worst thing in there was the fact that my daughter has a lot of health afflictions, and she had a kidney transplant, and she was having dialysis 3 times a week. we were looking for a donor, and there's a whole story behind that. And we did not know if my daughter was going to live. And unbeknownst to me, she blamed my daughter for us not being able to do a lot of things in life. So even though she got together with me, knowing I had a special needs daughter, there's a lot more there. I guess in the long run, she wasn't running to me. She was running away from something else. And then being with me, she felt caged because now she found herself in another situation where, okay, now this person can't lavish upon me the attention and the financial aspects of a relationship that she wanted. She blamed my daughter. And burning the journal where there's actually an entry where she, for all intent and purposes, almost states she wished Sarah hadn't gotten the kidney transplant and had passed away. It was probably the most gut-wrenching thing.
I think
that was worse. Like, yeah, she I'll be crude. She fucked another dude. But you know what? That did not bother me as much as like the horrible, I don't know, morbid curiosity of me reading her journal and all of the aspects of it. But that page there is, I have to say, probably the thing that just destroyed me, like, because my kid's my everything, and just
that's
like,
the
ugh.
parent, yeah.
Probably felt great to burn that.
Oh my God, you don't even know. I in comic book terms, I spread wings like Angel of the X-Men and flew around the world or some shit.
and
like, oh my God.
I think that's another word to like him telling that story that I would use to describe how it felt here. It wasn't just like this emotional coldness, but it was like an emptiness too, a little bit too, of that as well. But yeah, I mean, what he said is the amount of like how heavy that emotion was. So I mean, yeah, and the important thing, kind of related to the paranormal, while we're, on the subject, as far as, we're talking about cleansing things when things like this happen, and when, you feel these kinds of energies, or spaces, is that these can actually, if they're not handled correctly, if you're not cleansed it, bless it, what have you, whatever your personal belief is, these can actually escalate into paranormal activity from that point. It makes the energies vulnerable to that becoming possible. So, I mean, at that point too, I mean, that's when you're opening yourself up to, like having a haunting or things of that nature.
Yeah, totally. So what's some of your favorite ways of cleansing?
I personally am like one of those people that's very like into the simple smudging. Get the sage and smudging. Now, and I know a lot of people view that as it's just this new agey thing,
We're kind of diving into some more new agey hippie stuff. That's fine, because this is like stuff that's been around for centuries.
Right, and that's my
So
point.
it's like,
just to make that very clear, a lot of people have that misconception, and that's actually not the case with smudging. It is a great way to release negative energy, and it's actually not new agey. It's been around for a long time, and it has a very indigenous roots. A lot of cultures have done it for a long time. And I feel like that should show us that, if it's been going on for that long, obviously there's some, solid.
Well, it's spiritual as well as medicinal.
Right.
That's the thing where
Right.
even when they don't necessarily know that it's medicinal, years go by and science finds like, hey, this actually acts as a disinfectant, and this actually, so again, yes, it's body and spirit. Obviously, the better you feel, you're gonna feel better on all aspects of your personality.
And with that being said, I mean, that's a good point too, because it's not just important smudging. It's not just important. I mentioned when you move into somewhere, new home, new apartment, new office building, even. But also, obviously there's points in your life, like where if something's going on, you might want to do it. For example, they've related energy, negative space to people having disease or illness, or like cancer, for example. It's not necessarily the energy of, that specific disease, so much as it's the energy from the negativity and the pain and the fear and the emotional struggles that person is going through. So, I mean, even life events, and not even necessarily something that major, but, you still want to be aware of what's going on.
Right. And even people who are like, smoke bothers them. You can also use, people have used candles to cleanse the space, light, just opening up windows and letting fresh air and letting like sunlight come into places and just opening up like.
And there's even a science behind that too. They vitamin D3 we get from the sun, and that's actually really important. They've done studies that people that work the third shift jobs tend to get depressed more because they don't get enough vitamin D3. So
like mundane things like the spring cleaning of like organizing, putting things away, and then like cleaning, disinfecting everything and wiping things down and removing that dust and that energy. That also like does a lot too.
You can also do a humidifier too, where you use cedar plank and just a whole bunch of different things.
I took vacation days at work just to be able to do these spring cleaning type things because I'm excited about it. But yeah, I mean, like, all those are good things. You can even get, like, if you're one of those people that are like, because I even do this once in a while, if you're like, oh, I really want to use sage, but right now I have a lot of stuff going on and I don't have time to walk throughout my entire house saying a blessing over the house. You can just buy sage
and just light it.
And I will get like incense. Yeah, you can. It's like incense sage, just like a stick of incense and sage. And I have one upstairs and one downstairs, and I'll just light one downstairs and light one upstairs. And sometimes it's like
there's also like thousands of Pinterest threads and Google like how to cleanse a space, and you can get all kinds of Reddit even has full forms on this. So
the internet knows everything.
Yes, so the internet's a lovely space, a lovely place to go to find about all kinds of things.
good and bad.
Yeah, good and bad. Talk about negative and positive.
All right.
Right. I mean,
the internet could be a cesspool of negativity.
But like
Facebook.
That's true too, because I have, and I think I've talked to both of you about this. Last year, when like COVID actually started and became a big thing, and it's like, oh, we went through all these changes, and a lot of people were scared, or like people with depression and anxiety issues. We're having a lot of troubles with, handling things. I have anxiety, and I at the time, in March of last year, my work closed, and I was off work for like 3 months. So I'm sitting around the house, my anxiety is getting triggered, everything. But even with that being said, like, you make those changes, and even if you're living healthy, that can affect the energy. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's an important thing, too, to keep in mind. Like, it's kind of the old saying of, like, a happy home is a healthy home.
There's also, no matter where you go, there you are. So sometimes it may not be the space. It might just be you.
Right. So, I mean, you have to keep that in mind, too. Like,
if you're a shitty person, I hate to break it to you, but you're going to have a shitty space.
There you go.
Now, in relation to you, Jordan, okay, you and I both, we'll go, here's just backtracking to our lifestyles. Being in and out of bands, you interact with a lot of people. And, I talked about how my space was affected by relationships and everything else, but it can also be affected not necessarily in a romantic relationship, but also a creative relationship. You moved hundreds, 1,000 miles or so to California.
Yeah.
And you were with a band and you were living with them and everything else. And I remember you talking about just how gut-wrenchingly low it got at one point.
I wouldn't say that was necessarily where we were living was kind of rough. I mean, we lived in a motel that was converted into apartments. So we didn't even have a kitchen. It was a bachelor. But for me, it was like we were living in a tiny room with one bathroom, one room. It was a bachelor's. It's like less than a studio apartment. and there was 3 people living in there, and like living in like we claimed corners.
But
Yeah,
still.
so
Like-
your
like-
life has progressed,
yeah,
and you
so-
became very spiritual. But did you have any of that kind of intuitiveness when you were in that, like?
For that wasn't like where I was living. Where I was living was fine. For that, it was just like the 3 of us. I was living with 2 individuals who were also dealing with a lot of shit. So all 3 of us were just not mentally well.
So that was more of an
Yeah.
example, like what I said, where the
Right.
energy from like
So the energy was fine. And actually, the place where we practiced at was this giant facility that this guy bought an old abandoned warehouse and turned it into a bunch of places for bands to practice. Hell, we practiced like Dana Carey from Tool, like had a spot there. Like the used practice there. It was really weird, but like that place was awesome. Like the creative energy of that place. Like you walked in, it was just like holy crap. Like it was like the energy of that building was fantastic because you had all these like individuals and all these musicians just getting together in one place and just putting all their energy into creating. So when we were there, I loved being there, even though the room had like no windows because we were in this little studio and there was like no windows. You never knew how like it had fluorescent lighting. You had no idea what time it was, but like just being there was like, yeah, like, I really, really loved being there compared to I hated being at home because at home it was like we had back patio, but we weren't. Even though we were in LA, which is like super sunny all the freaking time, but it was like there was no sunlight that came in because like it was like facing another building, and we had this back patio that was covered, and then so there was no other windows because it was a motel, so we're like the in between. So the only window we had was our back patio window. So it just like we called the place the cell because that's what literally it felt like. It's just like we walk in, and it's like none of us ever spent time at home. I was like, the only time we were like, as soon as we woke up, we tried to get out of there and try to do stuff. Like there was a park across the street, there was a Starbucks. I would just go wander around LA if I wasn't working or something like that. Just anything I could do to just not be at home.
yeah. I mean, I'll say I can relate to that. Like I paint.
Yep.
For those like listening that don't know, and I have definitely lived, a few different places in my young adulthood and time in Columbus, and there was one experience I did have where I lived in an apartment with a roommate, and the things that were going on there, looking back, obviously there was some negative energy, and I never had the like desire to do anything creative like paint there. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. That's how it was when I was this place. Like when I was at home,
Yeah.
like I couldn't play music. I couldn't
I
get
tried,
creative.
like
Yeah,
I
it
got
was like-
canvas out, everything. I couldn't.
Yeah, it was like we tried to do some music stuff at our apartment, but it was just like it was just so like depressing being there. Like none of us could do anything. But then we'd go to like the space and it was like, okay, well, we have for here versus our practice space, and like that was fine. But our apartment was crap.
But it wasn't necessarily because it was more the aesthetics.
No, yeah, no,
it wasn't because like when you were in there.
No, it was
yeah,
actually
that-
the apartment
like-
itself was really nice. It was not run down. The guy who ran it, his name was Tony. He looks like what's his name? The big Mexican dude who's like in Desperado, has like tattoos. He's
Danny Trejo.
yes, he looked like Danny Trejo.
So
Our
just-
landlord looked like
We
Danny
love
Trejo.
Danny
Yeah.
Trejo in this house.
So-
just so you know,
So
we
our
love
landlord
him.
looked like Danny Trejo, and he was this big Mexican,
best.
scary looking dude, and he was the nicest guy in the world. And he was like he ran that place, and that was like his home. He called it his sanctuary. And he's like, it's sanctuary, it's quiet, like, we don't let anybody, like, anything in. It was, like, gated, so you had to, like, it was gated to get in. So it was a really secure, like, quiet place to be. And we're in North Hollywood, right next to Burbank. So we're not in a bad area, too. We're in a really nice area. So it's not like the place I was living in was not a bad place. It was just the environment that we created, because you had 3 people who were broken living together all in one spot in literally a room where we claimed corners.
I almost
like
hope like
that-
the people that lived there after you guys left cleansed it though.
I hope, yeah, right?
You ever think that maybe you?
Well, most of the
Guys?
people who lived there were most people who fell like on like hard times, and that's like where they
Oh.
that's where they like a lot of
That's
people who
like,
lived there, because there were bachelor rooms. So it was like almost all single like people living there, like for the
It's
most part.
like
There might have been a couple of
lower
couples.
scale Cecil Hotel.
Yeah,
If
so
any
it
of you
was-
know the story
oh, yeah.
behind that, yeah.
Well, I actually lived about 10 miles away from Cecil Hotel. I've actually driven by it. Never been inside, but I've been.
I wouldn't want to go inside.
I mean,
everything I know about it, I wouldn't want to go in there.
Talking about horrible negative spaces. I mean, I've been to Skid Row. I've been down there. It's
For those of you
fucked.
that don't know anything, you don't know anything or a lot of information about the Cecil Hotel. It's in California.
It's in LA.
All this, I'm not going to get into the details about it because I feel like that could just be a whole episode even. But
There's-
it is in Skid Row.
there's a Netflix documentary now.
Yeah,
about
go
it.
watch the Netflix documentary. And also, there is an episode, if any of you watch the BuzzFeed stuff on Hulu, where Sean and Ryan actually do an episode on it as well.
Cecil Hotel is pretty famous. I would imagine if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know what Cecil Hotel is, or just have a
You,
little
you
bit,
probably do.
a little awareness.
But
of it.
yeah, it does take a place on Skid Row, which
there's
is interesting that those two negative things are
well,
right
yeah.
with each other.
Well, Skid Row. I mean, it's basically what created Skid Row was the place that where a lot of convicts when they left the prison system, that's what they got dropped off. They dropped them off in the abandoned warehouse district of downtown LA, and then they like didn't leave because they
And
had
it's
nowhere
like,
to go. So
it's like now too, like if you're not part of the lower,
yeah,
I guess.
it's crazy.
If you're not part of like the lower class or middle class in California, like they don't even acknowledge that it's there. It's just like we've swept everything into this corner. It doesn't exist.
we were talking about like negative space. I mean, the energy in Skid Row is chaos. It's just insane. I don't even know how to describe it going down there. It's
Well, you figure there's, aside from a lot of negativity, the aspect of the amount of mental illness.
Oh, yeah, there's
alone
ton-
that-
Oh, yeah,
that's
yeah.
So
rampant
when you say
there.
chaos, it's
that's
the
literally
thing,
that's
why,
that's how I can. That's the only way I can explain it. It's like it's pure. Like the energy there is like. If you go to New York City, the energy in New York City is like frantic and crazy, and it's like almost being on a drug. That's how like the whole city feels. But like that area of LA, chaos is the only way I can describe it. But we're digressing right now.
Right.
I think at this point, Keith, is there anything else you want to wrap up with negative space, or how you feel about it, or like your personal feelings?
I guess in closing, the circumstances of a space, what happens there, but also the people that come and go, obviously build upon the energy that's there. And things in this household over the past couple of years with Ashley and I and my daughter have been very positive. And, you and I have played music here and practice here. I've worked on different artistic endeavors here, as has Ashley. I have my daughter a lot more through this whole pandemic. I get her a lot more now. She's no longer in school, and so she's here a lot between here and her mother's place. And I think that's the thing, where this house has gone through so many transitions of instances and people, inhabitants, and both positive and negative, but it's the reinforcement of positive. And I think that's where I'm going with this, is that the house itself, anybody who comes here is not only greeted by that, but takes a little bit of it with them when they leave. And that makes me feel good. That's and that's one of the things. It's just, that kind of hospitality being what it is, of that positive, welcoming nature, and being able to take that with them. And that's probably one of the nicest things. And I was like, yeah, I had a great time. And, when I left, I just felt very good.
That's good.
And I feel that's part of the energy.
I feel like that's the great takeaway from this whole subject of talking about negative space and negative energy, is on the opposite side of the spectrum. There's the positive energy that you can use to combat those situations.
Right.
So on the plus side, positive energy does the same thing, but in a positive way. So
So if you have any experiences with positive or negative energy, or like to comment on today's topic, you can send us an email at info@thespookydoor.com, or even hit us up on any social media platform. Just look us up under The Spooky Door or visit thespookydoor.com.
Also, if you would like to contact us, if you have a story that you would like us to share on the podcast, or if you would even like to be a guest on the podcast and talk about any personal experiences that you have had, you can also contact us.
Again, using info@thespookydoor.com. And always, I'm Jordan. With me is Ashley. We want to thank Keith for being our guest today.
Thanks for having us. Hey, thanks for the coffee. I'll blame you for the jitters and any negative energy that comes from it later.
Of course. And always, and join us next time through The Spooky Door.